Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is Nathanael Garrett Novosel. Nathanael is a professional researcher and advisor with over 20 years of experience studying individual and group behavior. Over that time, he has researched psychology, evolutionary biology, organizational best practices, leadership decision-making, business, technology, finance, and philosophy to understand how the world as we know it works and why. Nathanael spent much of his career using the insights from his research to help the world's leading executives solve their most pressing organizational challenges and create their strategic plans. Noticing the common drivers of success in all areas of life, he decided to devote his research, problem solving, and advisory skills to help people live the best lives possible. And at some point in our lives, many of us ask the question, what's the meaning of life? Well, my next guest spent 20 years researching that exact question and came up with some very interesting answers. If you're wondering what the heck you're doing here, why you're here, and what's the meaning of it all, you're going to love this conversation. Here's Nathanael. Okay, everybody, we're with Nathanael Garrett Novosel, and we're going to be talking about how to go from abandonment to the meaning of life. So it's a pretty big topic. Buckle up. We have a lot to cover. Welcome, Nathanael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't come up with something like that unless you've been through something, and that's what gives you that sort of perspective. So where are we coming from with all of this? Where did it start?
Yeah, it's a long story, but the short version is that my father disappeared in the middle of the night when I was 5. Now, I actually don't remember what happened or how I reacted to that, but I do remember that he reached out about 6 months later and wanted to see me. And so we arranged the following year for me to go out for 3 weeks and 2 days. I'll never forget that amount of time. And I cried because I'd never been away from my mother before when I went there. But when I came back, I felt a hopelessness, an emptiness, a loneliness, a worthlessness, just a void that I would never wish upon anyone. My worst enemy, if they, killed my whole family and they did all that stuff, I still wouldn't wish what I felt on them.
And I'm going to stop you there before you even go any further.
Please.
You're saying this as a 5-year-old, you felt those feelings, and how did you process that? What did you make of that experience? What did you say about and what did your mom say to you about your dad leaving? Like what happened?
Oh, well, my mother was a saint about it. She just said, very, very kindly, just like, well, he wanted to be there, and she never said a bad thing about him my whole life. But she's a very, very good person. Now me, a little bit of background on me. It turns out I went to a psychologist finally a little bit ago and found out that I'm probably highly functional autistic, like a ASD or Asperger's if you'd prefer. So it explains a lot. I jokingly call it the robot brain, like the part of my brain that's like just cold, like a Vulcan, and just no emotion. So I have one part of me, and I'm crying, and I don't understand why, because my robot brain's just sitting there going, "Why are you upset? Like, he's there, you're here. That's the way it is, so who cares?" Like, so it's just these two parts of me. So what happened was, in the middle, that night when I came back, and I was 6 at the time after that trip, and I can actually recall that pain. But my brain was weird. Like, I was crying, go, what is the point of all this? Why, I feel miserable. I hate everything. I want to die. Like, it was just really, really dark. But then there's a part of my brain going, that's a fascinating question. What's the point of it? The meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? I wonder if you could answer that question. And so I spent 20 years researching psychology, philosophy, human behavior, business, evolutionary biology, trying to answer that question because I thought, I was crazy enough to think it could be answered.
And I want to get to that, but I still want to go back to that 5-year-old who. Yeah. So now you don't understand why your father just left, and now you're getting ready to go see him. So was it excitement? Was it confusion? What were the emotions in going there? And And then what was that period of time like with him? I mean, just clarify it a little bit more. I just want to make sure we fully
Sure,
understand.
yeah. And I'm sorry. The one thing I don't remember is I don't remember how I felt when I was 5, because that's when your memories are starting to form. So I
Right.
don't remember exactly how I felt, but I do remember when I was going to see him. I was still 5 at the time, I think, or maybe I was 6. And so I remember being excited to see him because I hadn't seen him in a while, right?
Hmm.
So I think I might have been kind of naive, right, and just thought, oh, he's there, and no big deal, whatever. And said, yeah, well, I'll go see him. So I went and saw him, and it was a lot of fun, and everything was great. Other than when I was sad on the plane ride, missing my mom, but other than that, it was fine. Yeah, so everything was great, but I just couldn't comprehend the pain and emptiness I would feel when my father was ripped away from me again.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it was I mean, you talk about betrayal. I mean, I don't think I would call it that. I mean, that's what it was, but that's not how I would have interpreted it at the time. I would just interpret it as a sense of worthlessness and loss, and that was like, I don't like, oh, my father's not here, and one part saying, well, that's the way it is, and that's where he wants to be, but then there's a part of you inside knowing for a fact that it's like, well, he picked living somewhere else with some other
Hmm.
person over being with me. And I think that's what am I worth. I think that's the thing that really got me there.
And it's so interesting because here again, and we see this all the time, where someone else's actions cause us to feel unworthy, and it has nothing to do with us, but we
Yeah.
completely take it on as if it's all about us. So it's interesting how you move towards research to answer your questions. I mean, that's exactly what I did after my betrayal. I mean, I enrolled in a PhD program, not maybe what people would do right fresh out of a betrayal, but I was just desperate to understand, and it gave me those deep answers that I had to questions that I had had. What talk about why did you dive into the research that you did? What were the answers you were looking for? Was it to just get you out of pain? I mean, what was behind it?
Yeah, so there were three major things. The first one was what I described, which is like, what's the point of it all if we're going to feel like miserable or suffer, if you prefer the suffering term. Uh, that was one. The second was true curiosity. I have this thing after after 37 years. I can tell you that the thing I love most in this world, it feels like winning the Super Bowl,
Mm.
is coming up with like a new insight, or some coming up with some sort of new thought or idea or thing. Like that was what always got me excited in school. When, oh, someone invented this, then wow, they invented, like 5 minutes before, no one knew this was a thing. 5 minutes later, everyone knew it was a thing. Or Galileo, like
Mhm.
no one believed you for a while. So that's the second thing. But then the third thing is my fascination with human behavior. Again, that
Mhm.
kind of goes back. That's why I mentioned the Asperger's thing. I always have to mention it just because I have a different view of human behavior than other people. The number one thing you'll hear from someone who has Asperger's is they feel like an alien
Mhm.
because they don't act in the same way that other people do. They don't process things the way that other people do. They look at
Mhm.
things, completely different way, and they don't seem to fit in ever. And I never really, fit in. With people, I could kind of get along with anyone if I could just adapt, and I study their behavior and try to mirror it or mimic it, because
Mhm.
I knew I didn't really have any, of these traits to do myself, because I'm just kind of like a, regular, like I don't know, like just kind of like a robot or whatever, so or an alien. So I'm trying to mimic things so I could kind of get away with being in different groups. I was in orchestra, I was in football, I was one of those smart kids. Like I was able to do all those things because I didn't really fit into a group, so I
Mhm.
could kind of do anything I felt like, which is cool. But it was that passion in studying human behavior to understand it and master it, so I could effectively, act in society. That was really the third piece that was driving.
Right. So what were some things that you studied and then put into action, and then you saw a change in your behavior and in the people around you?
Oh wow, that's a good question. So there are a few things. There's like how to behave in ways that get you to be part of the group or fit in with it. One of the things someone with Asperger's have problems with eye contact. I notice that when you don't give people eye contact, they treat you differently. They either think you're
Mhm.
lying, or they don't connect with you.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, I got to learn how to do that. Uh,
So was it a
um,
conscious thing, like where you said, "Okay, I'm meeting with someone now, let me look into their eyes"? Like what?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
because I have, a lot of people when they look at people in the eye and they connect with them, and then when they look away, it's like a way to like gather their thoughts or something like that or whatever. But like for me, if I'm looking, or actually, let me rephrase that. People think that you're being honest and truthful and open and connecting when you're looking at them, and then when you're
Mhm.
looking away, it's like you're being, deceptive or something. I'm the opposite. If I'm looking people in the eye, I have no idea what you're saying. I have no idea. I can't think. Like I can't do it. So I'm looking people in the eye for the sole purpose of them feeling connection, and then I look
Oh,
away
wow.
to gather my thoughts and know what I'm saying.
Right.
And then it's like holding your breath. It's like
Yeah.
like take a deep breath, look somewhere else, gather my thoughts, look people in the eye, and then I'm holding my breath and I'm barely able to function, and I'm just saying whatever it is I thought of to say. It's really hard.
That's really interesting. And
Yeah.
it's interesting too, because I noticed, because I do video all the time, and I see myself on video sometimes, and I am totally looking away, and that's how I think.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. So like right now, as you and I are looking at each other, is there anything, are you getting any sort of, uh, feeling, any sort of like, what's going on? Is it just like, I'm just doing this for her sake? I'm just totally curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's training,
Yeah.
because usually with my conversations, if I were doing it in a completely natural way and trying to focus strictly on what someone's saying and all that jazz, I mean, you can even see me now. I'm looking like this way,
Right.
like I'd be looking that way the whole time, or be looking down or doing something. So
Yeah.
my staring into the camera to um, emulate. That's
Right.
probably the wrong word, but emulate eye contact is just a means to that, because I know that other people will feel more connected to what I'm saying if I do it that way. But I do have to take a breath every once in a while and look away to really
Right.
form the thoughts appropriately so that I can be coherent.
So interesting. Okay, so that was one part of your
Yeah.
research. What else did you, because I know you said you were trying to sort
Yeah.
of heal from some of these emotions. What other types of research did you do, and what did it lead to?
Yeah, so there were a lot of different things. My favorite, probably my favorite was, why do people behave the way that they do? And then you can learn why they do things, and then you can figure out on your own. Well, okay, so two things. One is, if you're trying, again, emulate the group behavior, your
Hmm.
goal is, well, they're doing it because of this. So if you have, your why should be similar, and then you should act in this way. So that was one thing. But the other thing is I truly just wanted to understand. I love understanding things, so I really wanted to understand just everything I could possibly understand about how the world works, how human behavior, why people do things,
Hmm.
get different things. I'm super interested in it. And what happened after 20 years of research is I finally I asked myself, I said, okay, well, you've been studying this forever, you have to have some sort of opinion on it. If you were to explain this to someone else, what would you do? And how would you explain it to them? Because you can't just explain 20 years of research. You'd have to like
Hmm.
summarize it.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, there are concepts that every philosophy has, and they're actually it came from this idea that, like, I kind of had in my head, because I'm, again, speaking into my naivete. I asked myself, like, what if everyone was right? Like everyone's just like, oh, this is right, everyone else is wrong. It's like, nah, I don't believe that. Everyone's right, or at least they think they're right. So let's give them that credit. Um, are they really right? Is everyone really right? And what would they be right about? And then that's when it came to me, a set of, it ended up being 8. It wasn't 8 at first. I
Hmm.
had like 4 or something, and then 7, and then my wife kicked in with the 8th one. But there were 8 concepts that were universal to all philosophies, all religions, and could be proven by science as to leading to someone feeling that they had meaning in life. And that
Wow.
was the breakthrough that led to, I spent 7 years writing it. I rewrote it, but it's what led to the book. It's called The Meaning of Life, A Guide to Finding Your Life's Purpose.
I love that. So can you share with us what those 8 concepts are?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief and then give you a chance to jump in. There are 8 concepts that underline all these philosophies. The meaning of life is growth. Every living organism on Earth exists to grow, period, full stop. You grow through experience. Experience is the medium through which all growth occurs.
Hmm.
Desire is the trigger or drive that you have inside to have the experiences that lead to growth.
Hmm.
Belief or beliefs are basically your ability to sustain that drive toward achieving your outcome or achieving that growth.
Hmm.
It could
Hmm.
either sustain you through adversity, or it could squash your desire if you have negative beliefs.
Hmm.
Um, the fifth one, I think it's the fifth one,
Well,
emotions.
well,
Sorry, go ahead.
if we go, so one
Yeah.
is that growth is growth. It's all about growth. Growth is
Yes.
just
Growth is the meaning of life. If
that
you
is the meaning of life.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you define meaning as either the definition, the purpose, or the significance, those are the three definitions when it comes to life. It
Hmm.
is part of the definition of life is that life grows, nothing else in universe self-replicates,
Right.
right? It is its purpose because that's what it exists to do.
Hmm.
And then significance, when you think about what is significance, all the people who achieve the greatest things are the ones who grew the most. So
Beautiful.
it's all
Okay.
three.
So growth. So okay. And number two, I'm going to stop you after each one because they're so
Please,
interesting. Yeah.
please.
So number two then.
Yeah, so experience.
Experience.
It's funny, I think it's Einstein and a bunch of other people said this, but experience is where all knowledge is attained. Experience is how all growth occurs. Experience is any activity or event occurring over a period of time, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so like if you go for a run and then your body, recovers and then you're ready to go for a greater run next time. But you have to have the experience of running in order to be better at running the next time. Like that's the experience necessary for growth.
It's so true because you could read a ton of books on running, but until you're out there running, you don't really have that experience. And how do you really understand it? You
Yeah,
know,
well, that's what's cool is that experience, the actual experience of running is one thing, but the experience of learning about running is another experience. It may not
right.
be as fully of an experience because you're not having all senses engaged and all that jazz, but you can go and learn about running and then be better at running than you would have if you had no running at all and then ran for the first time.
I see. Okay. What's three?
Three is desire. So it's the
Okay.
driving force for life. So desire requires three things. It's the lack of something. You have to have a lack of something, and you have to want something. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. You have to want something. There has to be an outcome, some sort of desired future state that's better than where you are. There has to be a
Hmm.
lack. You have to have
Hmm.
something that would, if you attained it, you would therefore be able to achieve it. And then of course you would have to then be driven to take an action to get there. So those are the components of desire. What's cool about that is that you wouldn't think about it, but all living organisms have some mechanism, some drive, right?
Hmm.
Even like single cell organisms, what happens is that, and they've done studies on this where, like amoeba, for example, or amoebae, I guess is the plural, it would be that they could have two food sources,
Hmm.
and it would be driven. It would be able to sense the two food sources,
Hmm.
to see which one has the more optimal ratio of nutrients, and then it will go and be driven to go to the one with the optimal ratio.
Even an amoeba.
Yeah,
How cool is that?
yeah.
Okay. What's number four?
Four is belief. So this is an interesting one, and I'm gonna push everybody here a little bit on both sides because I think this book is good for atheists and for theists alike. And this is the one that either people are like so down with or they're like, hey, wait a second. An atheist or skeptic would say, well, there's knowledge and then there's assumptions, right, that you
Hmm.
make, and that's
Hmm.
true. But basically, anything you don't know for a fact, so anything you're not observing in a current point in time is a belief. Like, did you
Hmm.
leave the
Hmm.
stove on? It's like
Hmm.
you believe you didn't, but someone could have walked over and turned it on while you were gone. So like you don't know that for a fact unless you're observing it in the point in time.
Right.
So everything, literally everything that you are not currently observing at this current point in time is a belief.
Hmm. Hmm.
The interesting thing about beliefs, and the thing that I always kind of like prod people on the skeptical side, is that basically I'm 37. Will I live to 39? I don't know. It's never
Hmm.
been proven. There's never
Hmm.
been someone like me
Right.
to live to that
Right.
long, so I could die tomorrow. You don't know. But
Right.
if I believed that I was going to die tomorrow, I'd be acting a lot differently. Let's put it that way. So you can clearly show that you act in everything in your life with a set of beliefs. And so the point of finding meaning is you have to have beliefs that align with your desires, and you have to believe in your ability to attain those growth outcomes in order to truly strive for them, or else you won't do it. That's the
So
point of it.
I love that you're bringing up beliefs because it seems like they drive behavior completely. It's
Mhm.
it's it's really the motor that gets everything running. And if you're coming from this whole, negative belief stack,
Mhm.
and you're just using one negative belief after another, and that's what's driving your thoughts, behaviors, actions, well, how could you possibly have a good life?
Yeah.
and it seems like it's really worth delving into and looking at. So beliefs are huge. Okay,
Yeah.
what's five?
Yeah, and so
Okay,
oh yeah, just a final thought on that is that
yeah,
so on one hand you have to have beliefs, and so people who say, well, I don't believe anything that's not true, it's like, yeah, you do. You believe things that aren't true. Like if
right.
you believe you're going to live tomorrow, you don't know that for a fact, so you are believing it. So yeah, I kind of prod that. But then on the other side, you do have to, your beliefs have to be close enough to reality so that they're realistic in the sense that you um, uh, that they're actually believable for you. So you
Hmm.
can't like, oh, I'm gonna, be a millionaire tomorrow. It's like, well, you can't truly believe that because of how big of a gap there is. Now it could happen. You can get the lottery and be a millionaire
Hmm.
tomorrow. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but your beliefs have to be somewhat grounded in reality. You can't just flap your arms and fly. So
Got it.
there's a little bit of imbalance there.
Right. Okay. Beautiful. What's five?
Five is emotions.
Hmm.
Now, I actually I was going to talk about a little bit about this later with regards to betrayal. But the thing that's cool about emotions is emotions can be calculated via formula, and that's
Oh,
one
I'd
of
love
my
to know.
biggest findings
Yeah, let's
because
talk about that.
I'm one of the most in touch person with my emotions because
Uh-huh.
the trauma and all that jazz. But the reason why I was able to dissect it is I cracked the code on it. It is a formula that's as certain as math. Emotions equal three things:
Hmm.
desire plus belief plus experience. And that applies to anything. Any emotion can be broken down into those three components. Most self-help people focus on the beliefs, right? Oh, you have
Hmm.
negative beliefs, that's what's causing. But it's all three of those things. So
Hmm.
let's take an example. My favorite one is jealousy, just
Hmm.
because it's so easy, right? So desire. What do you desire? You desire a person or thing. So that's the desire. Everyone knows that, right? So that's the first part, jealousy. But that's not the only part, right? Then there's a belief, right? So you believe generally two things when you're jealous, right? You believe that you deserve to have that thing, and that the person who has that thing or person doesn't deserve it.
Hmm.
Those are the two
Okay.
components. Those are the two beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is the experience, is that you're seeing the person with that person or thing.
Okay.
And with those three things together, you get jealous. Now,
Right.
here's the secret: if any of those changes, you won't feel jealous anymore. It's like, I know it's like, oh, how could that be? Well, think about it. One belief changes. If you change that belief from you don't believe that that person deserves that thing or person to
Hmm.
they do deserve that thing and that person, then you switch from jealousy to admiration.
Oh, wow. Right.
So any emotion can be broken down to those three components. And I've used that my entire life to, well, not my entire life, since I figured it out.
Mhm.
Since then, I've used that to dissect any emotion I've had. And
I,
it's
you,
so great.
yeah, and what I love about that is people who are struggling with healing from a betrayal, which is
Yeah.
who this audience is. Uh, if they just tweaked, let's say, the belief around it, or the experience, or the what was it? The third thing, the belief, the experience,
Or the desire.
or
Yeah.
the desire, right? I just
Yeah.
can't read my own writing. That's what that is. Okay.
That's fine.
Then they can
Yeah.
change that, which
Well,
is wonderful.
so let's take the betrayed feeling or
Right.
emotion. So those are three things, and I'm going to genericize. There are a lot of
Mhm.
beliefs and desires people can have, but let's just take a
Right.
generic one. So you desire a person. Generally, you want their love, you want their acceptance, you
Hmm.
want all those great things. You believe you have their loyalty and their devotion and their admiration and all those great things, and then you have an experience that that hits you in the gut punch, right?
Hmm.
Where they just completely just stamp all over those desires and beliefs and
Hmm.
crush them.
Hmm.
And that's why you feel betrayed, is because you
Mm.
had these desires and beliefs, and then you had this experience that completely made you wonder, up is down, left is right, and that kind of thing.
Right. So then let me ask you, out of all of those things, if someone were to find their way out of a paper bag here because we're just in this horrific situation, what would be the first one of those things that you would suggest they look at in order to change how they view the experience?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. The thing that I would recommend, I thought about this because in preparation for this, I was like, oh man, what would you change? Because it sounds almost kind of flippant to say, well, you can just change one of those three things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can change any of those three things. Probably the easiest one is to change your experience, like get away from whatever it is that.
Mhm. Okay.
So like if a person betrayed you, like try to avoid them, like just try to get out of that because it's only going to make things worse, right? So that's one thing. But your the number one belief you can hold is that this is going to sound cliche, but kind of like this, like all things happen for a reason kind of belief. But let me rephrase that since that's too cliche. It's, what can I learn from this experience or take away from this experience that's going to help me be a better person in the future? Because if you just say, because the easiest belief to hold is just, well, I'm not lovable, right? That's the easiest belief to just change right away, and then you go away from feeling betrayed to feeling you deserved it, right? And self-blame and all this other stuff, and that's not good. But it could happen, and you can do it, and it will eliminate the betrayal feeling, because you'll feel worthless, but that's not what you want, right? So I would recommend trying to figure out, okay, so think about, maybe think about it with empathy or compassion for yourself and the other person. So okay, well, maybe this person was afraid, or maybe this person was angry, or maybe this person was in a certain state, so they acted in a way that was absolutely horrid to me, but I can accept the fact that they did this, and if they're not willing to apologize, or if it's what do you call it, irreconcilable relationship, then you just have to, like, I believe that happened, and that's that, and I have to move on. So like those are kinds of beliefs that you can have. The other one, desire, that's probably harder, because I don't want to tell someone, well, once someone betrays you, then you can change your desire to wanting to get revenge on them, or changing your desire to wanting someone else immediately, or something like that. That rings kind of hollow. You could do that, but I feel like that's a little extreme, and you probably don't want to try to change your desire when you're in an emotional state like that.
Right. And it's interesting because we actually have a few experiential activities that we do within my community, and some are best served a little bit further along the healing process, some earlier. And one, it just reminded me from what you said, it's a transformative experience, and it's the point where you are able to see any gains from that experience. Early on, there's way too much anger and resentment and bitterness. But as you move through it, as your healing starts to progress, you actually can see, what have I learned? What have I gained? What will I never allow again? What are the, new skills I have? What are the benefits that I see? So definitely it can happen, but for sure, you just want to make sure that you do that when the time is right, and with somebody who knows what they're doing. That's what we do within our community. Okay. So that was 5 emotions. What's number 6?
Ethics.
Oh, okay. Talk to us about ethics.
Yeah, so ethics are rules you follow to optimize or maximize your growth without hurting anybody else. So there are 2 types of ethics. Now, I made these up, but I think they'll probably hopefully stick in the community in the future. So positive ethics and negative ethics. Negative ethics are basically don't hurt people, and positive ethics are do the right thing. So the reason why I separate between the 2 is because most laws and rights and so forth that are set by governments are negative ethics, right? Don't hurt people. Now, a lot of governments are dabbling in positive ethics, like help other people and sort of thing. But generally people go, hey, look, you can't really tell people what to do as long as they're not hurting anybody else, is generally what people start to react to. But that being said, then the positive ethics, this is where you might find either individual ethics where, hey, I have a good work ethic. I work 10 hours a day. Not everyone has that same ethic, and that's okay. You shouldn't force your ethics onto somebody else. But the whole point of ethics in the first place is, well, what's the best way to achieve my goal? What's the best way to attain the growth that I want? And how do I make sure I do it without hurting anybody else? Because I live in a society where, if you hurt someone else, then they're going to want to hurt you back. So you don't want to do that.
Yeah, wonderful. I remember teaching that to my kids. I have 4 kids. I mean, they're like, 25 to 18 now. But I remember saying, when they asked me about ethics and just being a good person and integrity and these types of things. And I remember saying it so simply, it was do the right thing, even when no one is looking. Very simple, but that's really it. Okay. What's number 7?
Support. So growth by yourself is a lot more difficult and a lot more limiting than if you had multiple people. And I give all these cute examples like building pyramids or the Stonehenge, or pick a cool accomplishment and imagine trying to do that yourself. I can't remember how heavy those Stonehenge blocks are, but try to imagine to carry those 2-ton blocks or whatever they were. Right. I think they were cut. They said they were dragged or carried or rolled 300 miles or 1,000 miles or something. I don't remember. I imagine trying to do that yourself. Not going to happen.
No.
So it's the idea that with other people, you can grow exponentially more than you could by yourself.
Oh,
And
that
that's
that
super
is so
cool.
true. Yeah, and I love that you're bringing that up because in the betrayal community, especially, support is crucial. And the study that I did proved that we need support, but at a time where we need support the most, we're the least likely to seek it because
Mhm.
there's so much embarrassment, shame, everything. But everybody who's listening and watching, get over it because we need that support. Okay,
Thank you.
and in a loving way. And 8, what's number 8?
So again, credit goes to my wife for this because I was like, I have 7. Is there anything missing? There's got to be something. And she said, choice. It's like
Mm.
everyone has a choice in life, and that's really important. They should remind themselves of that. And so, of course, me being like defensive, thinking, well, choice is embedded in all these other 7 things. And I was like, eventually, I came around. I was like, no, actually, you're absolutely right. Plus, it's a good way to end the book because it helps people take action, right? Take the choice. But choice is your ultimate capability. If there's one ultimate capability you have, it's that. Now, there are things in this world you can't control, and there are things in this world you can. And so if you do the best you can to make the right choices to improve what you can control, that is what your destiny is. So forget about the stuff that you can't control.
Right. And I love that because there are so many things out of our control, but the things that are, it's important to feel like we're grabbing the reins of control on the things that we have control over. Otherwise, life feels completely chaotic and just crazy. What do you want to make sure everyone knows as we wrap up?
So I would, if I had one recommendation, is that it would be to make sure that you do the best you can to break down your emotions into those desires, beliefs, and experiences, and just say, well, why do I feel this way? Truly trying to understand it and dissect it in a way that helps you to then be constructive in responding to it. Because speaking of that choice piece, you can't control how people act to you, but you can control how you respond to it. You control how you move forward with it. And so be the best version of yourself that you can be. Try to continue to make yourself better. Even if people aren't going to, do the same thing for you or do the same thing for themselves, that doesn't mean that therefore you should go and be self-destructive or vengeful or whatever. So do the best you can to take care of yourself.
Wonderful. And it's true. People are acting from their current level of consciousness. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, if we knew better, we'd do better. So, with that, just, we always have to up our game and just do our best. Where do we go to learn more about you?
Sure. So I have a website, yourmeaninginlife.com, and I also have a bunch of social media. Most of them are at Life the Book, although if I couldn't get that one, it might be The Meaning of Life or The Meaning of Life book, something like that.
And we'll have everything in the show notes. I want to thank you so much for the wisdom that you shared. I love these 8 principles, and it's really a great look at who we are and how we can show up even better. So I know you shared a lot, and the audience is just going to gain so much from what you share with us today. So thank you.
Thank you.
I love those 8 concepts Nathaniel shared, and once again, it shows how when we search for the meaning of our experiences, we find it, and often so much more. Stay in touch with Nathaniel by going to yourmeaninginlife.com, and we'll have all of his information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway: the 8 concepts Nathaniel shared, which are 1. Growth, 2. Experiences, 3. Desire being the driving force for life, 4. Beliefs, 5. Emotions, 6. Ethics, 7. Support, 8. Choice. So there you have it. Those 8 categories serve as containers to where you'll find life's greatest questions and answers. Of course, if you have a few questions about some symptoms you may be experiencing, take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz, which you can find at thepbtinstitute.com/quiz. And have you checked out the PBT Institute membership community? Imagine everything you'd ever need to become your physical, mental, emotional best. Community, support, certified coaches and practitioners you could schedule time with, daily classes on all kinds of interesting topics, curated experts teaching advanced strategies in the areas of health, mindset, spirituality, personal development. Imagine the most friendly, welcoming, and supportive place to become your best. All online. Nothing like this exists, and I am so excited to welcome you. Go to thepbtinstitute.com/join to learn more. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.